Okay, well, today I'd like to welcome the Mayor of the City of Port Phillip, Marcus Pearl, once again to TWiSK to give us what's becoming a monthly interview.
That's what we like to see, Greg. It's good to be with you again.
Thanks, Marcus. Now, the top question is, after last week's interview with the 3 childcare presidents, they asked me to pass on a question, which was, when is the promised collaboration with them going to start?
I was a little taken aback in terms of some of the feedback that provided around collaboration, and I freely admit it was my first week as mayor when the first childcare motion got through. So I don't think we got off to the best start, and I freely admit that, and there's some improvements there. But since then, the officers and the councillors have done their best to improve that standing. I think we've done a reasonable job at that. So the Deputy Mayor and I have been meeting with the centre presidents regularly to make sure there's dialogue between councillors directly and the centres, obviously. And we've already had some consultations, third-party consultations taking place last week and this week with the centres on options that could potentially revitalise the centres and other options to sale. So there's 9 options that are being considered, and that's been taking place also. So the officers, I'm satisfied, are doing a reasonable job now of making sure that the engagement is at a good level. And of all we're almost at risk now of having too many materials in some respects on the Have You Say website. But every time we're asked for a request, I know the officers do their very best to get out there and give information. And there's now well over 50 documents on the Have You Say website in relation to this topic.
Well, I guess their major beef was that, they're aware that there's negotiations happening with the state government, but they don't know what it's about.
The VSBA is the authority, so the Victorian Schools Building Authority is where those negotiations are happening, and that they have rightly, mandated is probably the right word, that those negotiations stay confidential. So it would be inappropriate for the city to involve third parties or anybody to update them, because if we breach that confidentiality, A, it's the wrong thing to do, but B, it would obviously put any of those funding negotiations in jeopardy.
Okay, no, but it does make it a bit tricky when they do things like go and meet with the Minister for Early Childhood Development, Ingrid Stitt, which they're doing. And, I would have thought it would be a stronger case if it was a unified case to funding authorities.
Yeah, the VSBA has asked us to keep those negotiations confidential, and we have to respect that, and we have to be bound by it. We encourage all parties and every party to talk to the local member, particularly Martin Foley, speak to the federal member, Josh Burns, to advocate for increased funding in this area. And I'm happy with the way the negotiations are going currently. I can definitely report on that. And I particularly thank Martin Foley, the local member for Albert Park, for giving us a good quality introduction to the state-based minister. And I'm very happy with that, how those negotiations are going. But it would be inappropriate. The VSBA has asked us to keep those negotiations confidential, and we're not able to share that information. What I can say is we're advocating as best we possibly can for the best outcome for our community.
Okay, now, part of the motivation was to fund an upgrade of the St Kilda North Childcare Centre, which needs an upgrade as well, I guess. Are you making submissions about an upgrade to that to any level of government?
We're making submissions at the federal and the state level regarding a number of childcare centres, including that one. I won't go through the specifics of what we're asking for through the VSBA process, because that would be inappropriate at this point for me to do so. But we're advocating for a number of centres and making sure that we get the best outcome for our city.
Okay, so you had a meeting with the childcare presidents last week, and how would you describe the tone of that meeting?
We've had a couple of meetings. So the Deputy Mayor and I have committed to meet regularly with the presidents, and we also met them on Wednesday at the front of the town hall here to accept a petition with 3,140 signatures or thereabouts. I'm not sure if that's the exact number. But yes, we've had a good couple of conversations. So the intention of those meetings from a councillor point of view, I presume they're the meetings you're talking about, because there's also been the third-party consultation meetings that week also.
No, I'm talking about the deputy mayor meetings.
Yeah, look, but they're frank and open conversations. I think there's legitimate concerns that are being aired by the three centres. Deputy Mayor Baxter and I do our very best to make sure we're listening and we're acting where we can and where it's appropriate for us to do so. But I don't think it's any secret, as you've talked about in your interview with the three centres, and they've talked to me about, is there is a sense of frustration that don't necessarily feel like they're involved in the negotiations with the VSBA, and I'm very sympathetic to that. But we're in I wouldn't say a difficult situation. It's a perfectly understandable situation where, at the moment, those negotiations are rightfully confidential.
Okay, now thanks for that, Marcus. Then I guess the next biggest thing to happen in St Kilda is this work on the Palais forecourt, which is set to start like any day now, and the tenders were approved with a little extra money at the council meeting, were they not?
Yeah, like most projects at the moment, Greg, the budget seems to increase every month. So we're eager to get this one started and out of the ground. But yes, it's been approved at the council meeting. Work is to start in May and completion scheduled November, December.
Yeah, so that's a quick project.
It is. It's a reasonably big project as well for that area. I wouldn't say it's like a huge building, etc., but it is fairly complex in terms of some of the soil requirements, the traffic areas, making sure we support local businesses while the construction's going through. But all in all, the majority of councillors very much support it, and we see it as an important improvement to that area.
Okay, well, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
The Kilda Film Festival's coming up at the end of May. So can you give me an idea of how much of that is going to be in person or online?
The schedule's coming out shortly, so you'll get that exact breakdown. I don't have the exact percentage breakdown, but we're going to do a hybrid again because the format works really well. We got 31,000 unique views that went the test of time. When I say 31,000 views, it wasn't like a 2-second click. People actively online involving during COVID, so that was success. So we're going to do a dual format this year. The opening night is a big event for our city, and it's found a really nice new home last year in the Astor Theatre, but we'll see what happens this year. But the event schedule will be out shortly, but it will be a hybrid event, which personally I think is a really good way of doing it.
Okay, well, that's good. I look forward to that schedule.
We look forward to seeing you there, Greg.
Yes, in more than my virtual presence.
Yeah.
Now, just following up a couple of things, I was looking at the Vineyard, and the Vineyard's been slated for an upgrade some time ago. Do you know what's happening with that?
Yeah, there's been some negotiations around the lease agreement there, etc., which to facilitate an upgrade, etc. They now have ceased effectively, so the officers are now looking at alternate ways that site can be looked at, and the lease will just continue as is. So I don't have any update in terms of imminent construction at that site or what's going to happen going forward, but it is a much-loved part of our city and a pretty successful business in its own right at the moment.
Okay, so have the plans been abandoned to upgrade it, or...
Well, I don't think they've necessarily been abandoned, but at the moment they're not progressing. So we'll wait and see what happens. Obviously, I need to be a bit careful what I say because we're a planning authority and have a landlord relationship or a supervisory landlord relationship. But I think
I'm just interested in what's happening.
Because look, at the moment the current lease is just going to. The advice I have is the current lease is just going to continue as it currently is. So.
Okay, and have you got is there any timing on the library upgrade?
It's in we need to reschedule that in the budget process. So the St Kilda Library, you're talking about St Kilda Library, I take it?
That's right.
Yeah. Look, hugely successful asset. It's loved and it's used, but, it's looking a little tired inside. The original proposal there previously was to, given the constraints we had around office space in St Kilda Town Hall, was to upgrade the library and put some office space above it. That was one of the proposals. It never came to council for formal endorsement, but that was one of the ideas. then COVID happened, and obviously our workplace, the way we all work now has changed substantially. So that requirement's probably come down a bit. There has been some money for many years in the forward budget for the site, but it's something we're looking at the moment in terms of bringing that forward. But it is due for a renewal. It's going to be a big renewal in terms of the community consultation process, and there's a lot going on council at the moment. So I would probably, the council probably would like to see a little more time just to get through our current priorities. And then I know the officers are already working on some options that will come back to councillors to consider before we go out to public consultation.
Is there any issues you'd like to raise, Marcus?
Let's have a...
Apart from
I think. But what about Cowderoy Street? I think you brought that up with me separately, but that's something that's St Kilda. You're a St Kilda demographic, obviously, so we should talk about Cowderoy Street.
Oh yeah. So at their annual general meeting, they had a talk on that, which I put a summary in the last TWiSK, and they were talking about traffic counts that have been done, and I guess they're upset about rat runs. So. What's happening down there?
There's a couple of things to take in consideration. So that just so we're clear for your viewers, Cowderoy Street has become, I think it's being used for an alternate route, is the best way to put it. But there's significant traffic increases, which is what our study has determined over the years, particularly I think our baseline was done in 2014 or 2016 or thereabouts. But basically people coming down Cowderoy Street to then turn left into Beaconsfield Parade or Beach Road. That's causing a large bank up. But and there was a petition brought, I think, to council in 2018 or thereabouts for us to stop that left-hand turn from Cowderoy Street. And predominantly council has done some things over the years, but they're not alleviating the issue around the traffic congestion that's being caused, such as we've dropped the speed limit in the area from 50 to 40 and those sorts of items. I don't think this is a road traffic safety issue as such at the moment. Some people may disagree with that, but the data seems to indicate there hasn't been a large number of events, but it is becoming difficult for those residents in that area. Officers back in 2018, 2019 were looking at to see how we can improve the intersection around the Park Street area, Patterson down into Fitzroy Street, etc., to try and put a traffic intersection light there on Fitzroy Street. The fear is if we stop the left-hand turn into Cowderoy Street, which may or may not be correct, that it will then just cause a diversion of the same traffic down heading towards Fitzroy Street, which will then bank up even further because of the traffic issues we see at the intersection there with the bi-direction bike path, as well as Fitzroy Street. So, and then if we close it off completely, you've then got other streets like Mary Street, etc., that will then build up. So we understand, particularly those residents that are deeply affected in Cowderoy Street, this is a substantial issue, and there is a large amount of concern that the residents don't feel like council is representing their views and they wanted them to be represented. I know this is something that the three Lake Ward councillors Councillor Bonds, Councillor Sirikoff and Councillor Copsey are taking very seriously, particularly Councillor Sirikoff is very focused on it at the moment. And she's doing her best to work with some officers so we come up with some solutions. There's also been more recent concerns about the proposed pop-up bike lane down Kerford Road and the Shrine of the Sea project, about traffic implications that could have on this area also, and that's something that needs to be taken into account. So no easy solution to this one, Greg, but it is something the Lake Ward councillors are spending a lot of time on at the moment and doing their best to come up with some solutions with.
Okay, thanks, Marcus. And by the time people are watching this, we may have a federal election called.
Yes, and we've been spending a lot of time advocating the priorities. In fact, I'm just looking for my booklet, which is a bit too far away, but advocating our federal election priorities for the Liberal Party, the Labor Party and the Greens, and those discussions have gone very, very well. But I'd encourage your viewers, listeners, to make sure that they get on the phone to Steph Hodgins-May, get on the phone to Colleen Harkin, get on the phone to Josh Burns, and make sure that the local projects that you want to see and the local projects you're most passionate about front and centre. And if you want to look at those, just do a Google search for City of Port Phillip Federal Advocacy Priorities, and you can see a full website of all the priorities that we have and the full costings of those also. So those discussions have been going very, very well, but the rubber hits the road when we start getting some election commitments. So we're looking forward to the election being called, and hopefully our advocacy over the past few years bears some fruit.
Okay, well, thanks, Marcus. I've also got a page on TWiSK, a Mac Matters page, where I have links to all that material. So thanks for your time again, Marcus.
No troubles at all.
Thanks for suiting up and fronting up.
No worries. My pleasure as always.
Thanks, Marcus.